Well, guess what? We're back. It's the Bucket List. I'm Paul Collins, along with my wife Nancy, my co host, and we're here to talk to those folks, especially 50 and beyond, toward retirement. But those of you who are less than 50, you could gain something there too, because someday you'll be 50 and
That's right.
you have parents who are 50, or you have grandparents or friends. Anyway,
And they need to be listening to the parents and the grandparents.
that's right, because even young people should have a bucket list. They probably do. Something that you've been putting off to get round to it. It's down at the bottom of your bucket. Pull it out. That's what we do here with this show. Nancy, we've talked to folks about the history of the Internal Revenue Service and the history of the United States income tax. We've talked to people about Medicare. We've even touched on Medicaid, which isn't necessarily relegated to the retirement years because there's a lot of younger folks on Medicaid. I recommend that all of you who have a computer, you can, at no cost, subscribe to daily emails, sometimes more than once a day, from the Internal Revenue Service. And they will provide you with all kinds of information and keep you updated on tax issues and benefits, because there's not only taxes, but there's benefits. And then also you can subscribe to a newsletter, email that'll come just about daily. That's from Social Security Administration. You can get them from, just go on and look. There's all kinds of government emails that'll come to you. There are those from the Federal Drug Administration, Federal Communications Commission, whatever your interest may be. If it's health, if it's retirement, if it's banking, finances, broadcasting, you can get these emails, and they'll come daily.
See, to butt in, think about it. If they're 50 or even 40, they need to be reading this stuff, because over a period of time, you might say, oh, now it looks like this is where this is headed, or this is where this is heading. I need to be doing something about this now. I shouldn't wait until I'm 50.
That's right. In fact, when I was teaching college classes, quite often I would have students, always I'd have students fresh out of high school, but I'd have some older students as well. But those right out of high school were like 18 or 19 years old. I would say, yesterday I was your age. And then I would smile and say, guess how old you'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, and see, the thing of it is, today you're your age, whatever you are. Tomorrow, hopefully you'll be in heaven. It's that quick.
It really happens fast.
Yes.
Now, having told you some of the things that we have already told you and encouraging you to do some things, it's important for me to set the stage for what I'm going to tell you today about the potential of nursing home, because it's possible. You may have a loved one in a nursing home. You may have a loved one that is headed toward nursing home. You may also, listen to me carefully here. I recognize that there's a lot of things going on in today's world that grab your attention. Some of the things happening now were predicted by very knowledgeable people, believe it or not, even 4,000 years ago, people that were very knowledgeable. All of the knowledge hasn't happened here in this generation. There was a lot of knowledge prior to, and very accurate knowledge. They knew 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and 2,000 years ago about trouble and turmoil in the world, and catastrophes like volcanoes and earthquakes and droughts. The western third of the United States right now is in a very serious drought. They knew about all that it would be coming. They also knew how confused mankind would become, and they knew about war. And they said there will be war, and there will be rumors of war, and the list goes on and on and on. We are living in times when there's a lot of earthquake activity. There is drought. In some areas, there are floods. We're in a time when people don't know what to make of the weather. I find it interesting that we'll watch the weather. Older people do that. We watch the weather on TV, and they'll be saying, well, we're going to have rain on Saturday and Sunday. And then later, a couple of days later, they say, no rain on Saturday, Sunday. It's going to rain on Monday and Tuesday. And then the next day, they say, it's going to rain on Saturday and Sunday. Next week's going to be clear. And then finally, at the last minute on Sunday, they say, we're going to have rain starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. But guess what? They got that part right, because they almost 5 o'clock today. And where we are, Central Daylight Time, it was about 7 o'clock. And we had a rain at our house. But anyway, we watched the weather. We don't know what to make of this weather. We had temperatures here in Springfield, which I call Springburg, USA, in Springfield, Missouri, in this area, the Ozarks. We had temperatures in the 90s, and we had a week ago very high humidity. Well, the humidity kind of went away. It was still very hot. And here we are, the second day of summer, and we're going to be in the 60s all day. What's with that?
Well, no, but you could say, oh, well, you really can count on this. It's going to be hot with high humidity. Then it may not have so much humidity, but then it could cool off where you feel like you need a sweater.
Well, I'm wearing a sweater today, and I know it may not show up good on TV, but it sure feels good on me. Nancy's wearing a sweater. Anyway, there's an old saying about if you live in Missouri and you don't like the weather, just wait a day or two and it'll change.
Yeah,
and that happens.
And that's a positive in a way.
That's right. Now, we need to get down to business here, Nancy. We know that in the middle of a very troubled world, politically, economically, globally, naturally, with weather and all the things that are going on, and wars and rumors of wars, most people may not take the time to look at some of the practical sides of life. And one of the practical sides leading up to nursing homes is medical care. Now, we've had our primary care physician as a guest on the old Happy Hour show that we did for 2 or 3 years. And she's a lovely little lady and very bright, and we love her, and she loves us, and she takes good care of us. We've also had another medical doctor on the show a couple of times, and then we had a chiropractor on 3 times, and we had a naturopathic physician on, I think, 3 times. So we've covered the ground pretty much. Let me tell you, Nancy and I have a primary care physician, and I have a cardiologist who took care of the 4 stents that are in my body. They're little metal things, tubes they insert in the coronary arteries to keep them open. And then I have another cardiologist who specializes in pacemakers, and I have mine right here, and I can feel of it, and it keeps track of me. It has 3 wires on it.
And what's its name?
Well, I call it Buddy. I call it my gizzard, and my gizzard is named Buddy. So this is my pal, and my pal monitors me all night and sends signals to the cardiac center at the hospital and keeps track of me. And I take quite a bit of medication. And one day I asked our little primary care physician about, was there a way to cut back on some of this? And she looked at me with that beautiful smile, and she said, they're keeping you alive, you know. And I said, enough said, end of discussion. So it's okay. So we have a good relationship with our doctors. And then I also have a dermatologist, and she sent me to an allergist and found out a whole bunch of stuff that I'm allergic to. It's all on this stupid smartphone. There's a list in here as long as your arm, literally, and that I didn't know I was allergic to all this stuff. But then finally I had another problem area show up on my leg, and the dermatologist was a little bit bumfuzzled out. The allergist and the dermatologist are both ladies, and our primary care physician is a lady. But anyway, the dermatologist, she cut a little piece off, a little sample, and sent it away to the lab, came back, and here I was at that time, 85 years old. I'm now 86. At age 85, I had developed an allergy, an allergic reaction to tomatoes and blue cheese. Now, the blue cheese, not too bad, but tomatoes, I'd been eating them all my life.
Tomatoes it seems like are in everything, in every recipe, in every box.
I can't have tomatoes in ketchup or dried tomatoes or soup or anything that has tomatoes.
That's right.
So these things happen. I was telling Nancy, we were sitting out in the car waiting until time to come into the studio building here. And I said, I've told a lot of people that growing old is not for sissies. But I can also tell you, growing old gets expensive because I have hearing aids, which I forgot to take out. They're still with me. And early this afternoon, I go back to the doctors of audiology. They are people with 4 years of college and 4 years of audiology school, so they have a doctorate in it. And get out the old checkbook for a new set of hearing aids, and I'll write a check for $3,500. So growing old is not cheap. But here's what I want to say about medicine and people from 50 on especially, but if you're under 50, encourage the seniors or the would-be seniors, soon-to-be seniors in your family to pay attention to their medical care. I make it a point to be a good cooperating partner in my own health care. I cooperate with the doctors. I cooperate with the pharmacist. We have dentists. I cooperate with the dentist. But my primary care physician and my cardiologist and dermatologist, I cooperate. Whatever they say, we work it out and get it done. Now, there's a problem today with many senior citizens skipping the doctor. I cut out an article from a little magazine that I read, a very reliable source, I might add, that there's a share of the population 65 and older who are avoiding health care due to cost. Mm-hmm. Like I said, growing old is expensive. We know that. Hopefully, in all the turmoil and all the politics that are involved, someone will listen to a higher power and work out a way to handle the healthcare needs of an aging population, because there's getting to be a lot of us. Anyway, in fact, when I was a kid, if you turned 65, that was remarkable. Mm-hmm. Most people didn't live to be 65. Now here I am, 86, and just came back this weekend from a conference where I was a speaker at a national men's conference. And by the way, Dr. Jim Wining, the president of Acts Ministry, was my guest for that sojourn. And I think he enjoyed meeting these new people as I did. But anyway, those 65 and older are getting to be a very large portion of our population, and too many are skipping the doctor. Even with Medicare and Medicaid, 5.2% of the 65 plus population. Now, that's a lot of people, because out of 325 million in the United States, at least half of them are senior citizens, about. I guess, I'm guessing that part. But anyway, 5.2% of the 65 plus population reported there was a time in the past year when they needed to see a doctor, but could not would not, but could not because of cost. Now, Acts Ministry and Acts Media Group Acts Ministries always had a motto, serving where needed. We're concerned about this. Acts Media Group now is it's a department of Acts Ministry, which sponsors all of this that we do here, also has the motto, doing the right thing. Always looking to do the right thing and serve where needed. This is an area this ministry helped a man get a kidney transplant. It's helped the disabled. It's helped veterans and so forth. It's all over the place. But here's an area that really needs some attention. If you have ideas about this, please contact us through the website, Acts, ACTS. It's like the book of Acts in the Bible, ACTS, ActsMediaGroup.com, and voice your opinion. Check out the website, take a look at some of the things that are offered, and then we welcome your suggestions. This is a serious problem. The 65 plus population, A lot of folks, 5.2% of those, that's a lot of people who in the past year didn't see a doctor, a medical doctor, because of cost. The state where they had the best participation, 65 and older, with medical doctors, that was North Dakota. Only 2.8% of their people failed, of their 65 plus population, failed to see a medical doctor last year. But even at that, 2.8% is a lot of people, even in North Dakota. The state where they had the most people, 65 and older, who did not see a medical doctor because of cost this past year was New Jersey. And they had 8.2% of their population, 65 and older, who did not go to a doctor because of cost. Now, we think about New Jersey as being right next door to New York, and it is. We think of New Jersey as an old state, and it is, the Garden State, and it is. We think of New Jersey having an older population, and it does. It's a shame. 8.2% of their people, 65 and older, did not seek medical help this past year. Now, what about by race or ethnicity? This is not a good figure. Of the black population, African American, however you want to refer, 8.1% failed to see a doctor if they were 65 and older because of cost. Among those who are Hispanic, Latinos, Mexicans, Hispanics, 11.1%. That's the largest group of those 65 and older who did not seek medical care because of cost, Hispanics. And our nation has a lot of Hispanics and more coming, as we know, every day. 11.1%, that's a lot of people. The Asians, and we have a very strong Asian population in this country, and have had way back to the time when they built the railroad connecting the East and the West. The Asian population, 10.2%, do not seek medical care if they're 65 and older because of cost. And listen, we usually think about Hispanics or Asians as they're all in business, they're all doing good, they're all well-to-do money-wise. No, that's not true. 10.2% of them could not afford to go to the doctor this past year. Now, what about Caucasians? You and I are Caucasian. 3.9%, almost 4% of the white population over 65 did not seek medical care this past year. So that averages out that out of the United States population, 5.2% of the people did not seek medical care if they were 65 and older because they couldn't afford it. Now, I've thrown out a lot of statistics and percentages. You get tired of hearing those, but here's the overall picture, the overall message. There is a problem of finding a way for people 65 and older to get medical care that they can afford, but even beyond that, to get good medical care. Because sometimes people get medical care, but it's not top of the line. It's not what they need, and they die. We know of someone just a few months ago, a person very dear to us, very dear to this ministry, who died prematurely in spite of medical care because it was not the very best state-of-the-art, whatever you'd want to call it. Not that she would have lived a normal lifespan, but she would probably have lived a lot longer and more comfortably than she did. In other words, there is a difference in medical care. Let's face it, folks. We know a man who's in our circle of friends who, because of cost, went to a medical service provided primarily for low-income people, and it's very basic. It was very difficult to transition, and with a very serious, potentially very serious heart condition, it's very difficult to transition from that level of care to one of the major hospitals here that had all the equipment needed for treadmill tests and electrocardiograms and all the things that they can do. Very difficult transition from that medical service provided for low income into mainstream medicine. Hope that makes sense to you. So what I'm saying is 65 and older, a lot of folks can't afford care, and sometimes the care they get may be, and these are all, listen, there's a difference in medicine because of medical care because of equipment. It's like in broadcasting, there's a major difference in quality of broadcast because of the equipment. So anyway, if you have more questions about that, contact me through the website, actsmediagroup.com. Now, how about this as to income levels, Nancy? Those 65 and older who are skipping last year, they skipped getting any medical care. Those who made less than $25,000 had gross income of $25,000 for the year. It was 10.5% of them who did not get medical care. Those that had an income of $25,000 to $50,000 or to $49,999, 4.3% of those couldn't afford to go to the doctor. Now that's a pretty good chunk of money, but in some parts of the United States, even $50,000 a year is not that much money these days. Not when we have inflation and shortages, and you go to the grocery store, it costs a lot more this year than last year. Mm-hmm. Transportation, the price of fuel is up for the cars. Taxes have gone up on property taxes and so forth. So $50,000 a year is not what it used to be. And in certain parts of the country, it's just a drop in the bucket. And 4.3% of the people in that income group couldn't afford to go to the doctor. Now, what about those $50,000 to $74,999? In other words, those $50,000 to $75,000. Guess what? 2.4% of them couldn't afford to go to the doctor this past year because of the cost. And some of you are probably saying, wow, $75,000, that's a lot of money. Yes, it is. But some places where you live, it's not a lot of money. And especially if the medical care is at a distance from you, mm-hmm. and depending on where you live, we've got to rethink the value of the dollar, among other things. So anyway, 2.4% of those people couldn't afford to go to the doctor. This is a serious situation, folks. Now, what does this lead up to? Leads up to this. Those of you who are not 65 and older, you need to be aware of what is confronting mm-hmm. the senior citizens 65 and older that you think they have it made because they're retired and living on Social Security or something. They don't have it made. And guess what? Someday you will be where we are, and it's probably going to be more difficult unless you plan now. You must mm-hmm. plan now. Now, Nancy, we did some shows about money, about how to save, how to invest, how to spend, how to get money, etc. We won't go over to that now, but it's very necessary for people to start planning now. At age 50, it's not too early to start planning for your retirement. You really should have started the day you started your first job. But mm-hmm. all that having been said as background, age 50 is a good time to start if you haven't. And there are many investment programs through your employer and that sort of thing. We know, I won't go into all that, but I will tell you this, that we now have this aging population, which means that there are facilities for retired people. There are retirement homes where people, most of those, frankly, most people can't afford them. They don't have enough income to live in one of those situations. But there's a lot of them around, but it takes a lot of planning to be able to come up with the amount of money to have enough retirement to be able to afford to live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor, and you get 2 meals a day, and you have a game room, and you have a bus that hauls you around to different activities and so forth. We have some friends who now live in Arizona who used to manage one of those facilities, and it's expensive to live there. Anyway, besides that, if you get to the point where you're not physically able to do a lot of things, we need to tell people about nursing homes and what leads up to that. For instance, at a nursing home, like where you worked for 32 years as a nurse doing geriatric nursing, they had independent living.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now describe independent living.
Independent living is just independent living. That means that you don't need any help with really anything. You're able to function well physically and mentally and even emotionally. You're able to do all without any help.
What's the advantage to independent living, say, on the grounds of a nursing home where you're next door to the nursing home and a retirement home that's in the middle of the city? What's the advantage of independent living in a nursing home facility?
Well, I made quite a few calls to people that were in independent living
as a nurse,
mm-hmm. and they had fallen or they had a problem, and somebody called the supervisor, who ended up being me, and I went and took care of them, sent them out to the hospital or.
Right. So in other words, the advantage of independent living in a nursing home setting, where you might have an apartment mm-hmm. that's a duplex or a triplex or a sixplex or mm-hmm. whatever, or like a hotel room, mm-hmm. Is that you have nursing care, medical care close at hand, and then that's quite an advantage. Now,
yeah.
Independent living, what is residential care?
Residential care means to me assisted living.
Okay, so that's assisted living.
That means that they may be functionally independent or need I'll say a bare hair help with something functionally, but mentally they may look really good, but memory-wise, which leads to needing assistance with some things that memory would play into. That's where assisted living comes in.
Okay. Now, Nancy's mother developed Alzheimer's, and she was not an independent living candidate. She was not an assisted living candidate. She was a nursing home patient.
Yeah.
And then Nancy's dad, because of age and falling, mm-hmm. He became eventually a residential or assisted living resident at the nursing home where Nancy was a nurse for 32 years. And his mind was good, but mm-hmm. he walked with a cane. He was a neat little guy, about Nancy's size. He was a small man. And it's kind of interesting. He had basically a one-room studio apartment. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to cook, so it wasn't really an apartment. He had a nice big room, and he had a nice big bathroom, and he had plenty of closet space. Mm-hmm. He had a good TV. He had, and he had his books, and he had his recliner that we'd bought for him, mm-hmm. that he liked, and he was a guy that never ate soup. Mm-mm. Didn't like soup, and now.
Or hot dogs or hamburgers or anything like
that. He worked, his main work life was in Saudi Arabia. He was an American from Texas who took his family to Saudi Arabia, worked in a power plant there as a draftsman for Aramco until he retired, early retirement, moved back to Springburg, USA. Mm-hmm. And but he had a certain narrow gauge type of living. Neat guy, very pleasant, but he didn't want to eat hamburgers, hot dogs, sandwiches, or soup. At the nursing home where he was in assisted living, he was down at the end of the hall, a corner room, and he would get his cane and he would walk to the dining room and have breakfast, whatever they put in front of him, and he never complained.
Nope.
And then back to his room, and he would read his books. Who was that author he liked to read so much? He's a pastor out in California. And anyway, I'll think of him later. It's not important. But he would read those hardback books, and they're very inspirational, and watch the news or whatever. And then at noon, get his cane, and he'd walk that long hallway back up to the dining room, and he'd eat whatever was set in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
In the evenings, they brought the meal to the assisted living people. They would bring soup. He never complained.
Nope.
He ate it. And when people would ask him, his last name was Patrick, they'd say, "Mr. Patrick, can I get you anything? Do you need anything?" And his standard reply was, "No, thank you. I'm quite content."
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes Nancy will ask me if she can get me anything, and I'll say, "Well, I'm getting close to being almost nearly sort of like basically quite content."
Mm-hmm.
So we have fond memories of her dad in assisted living. Now, when that's not possible, your dad fell and had to go into nursing home in the same facility as a nursing home patient. What is that? What happens now? You can't be in assisted living. What's nursing home? What are we talking about here?
Okay.
1 bed or 2 bedroom?
Yeah, you can have a private room, which is just one bed, your bed in a big room, or it could be semi-private, of course, with another resident in the other half of the room.
And they're called residents, not patients, by the way.
That's right.
Residents.
And there's a bathroom that you might share with 3 people besides yourself. That makes 4 people using the same bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have staff that are going to help you take your bath, whether it's you might say a so-called tub bath or a shower.
Okay. And so it's almost like hospital care.
Yeah, because it's all based on the paperwork that, say, the staff gets all this information from the hospital. And then you already know about a lot of the problems and the diseases, say, that person brings on those hospital records from the hospital. So that gives you an idea what kind of care that person's going to need. Then the care plan coordinator goes and talks with that resident. And she's already knowing, and she does a memory test.
Mm-hmm.
Mini mental status exam. She does that. She does that every time she fills out this paperwork, which is I hesitate to say mandated by the state, but it's all a care issue, and it's probably 30 pages now, for all I know.
Okay.
And it covers everything from head to toe.
Okay. Now, I want to back up just a little bit, folks, here and remind you that you may think nursing home's not in your future. It's in the future of a lot of people because it is a growing, it's already huge, but a growing industry. Many, many, many nursing homes across this country, and they're there for a reason, because people need them. Now, Nancy's dad was nearly 90 years old when he went in the nursing home, because he had maintained a good regimen of seeing his doctor faithfully and cooperating with his doctor. He'd maintained a good diet over the years, and he had exercised. He exercised regularly. He belonged to a fitness club so long that they stopped charging him annual dues. They gave him a lifetime membership. When he no longer wanted to walk to the fitness center, He had a low rider bicycle exercise machine in his home, and he used it to keep his legs strong. We have it in our home now. But her dad was not a physical fitness nut, but he was just a good steward of what God had given him. And consequently, he delayed nursing home for his day a long time. You can too, and you can encourage the seniors in your family to take better care of themselves by seeing their doctor, cooperating with their doctor, watching their diet, and getting their exercise. But when the time comes to go to the nursing home, it's expensive. Right now, we're talking at least $5,000 each month. Now, I'm going to give you some help here. There is a thing called long-term care insurance. Probably right at 10 years ago, I took out long-term care insurance on Nancy. Nancy's a little over 10 years younger than I am, but I didn't take it out on me. Now, we got to use some common sense, folks. Nancy is a well-trained, highly experienced geriatric nurse. I'm not. Now, a woman can take care of a man.
Much easier than a man that takes care of a woman.
That's right. That's what I'm getting at.
Yes.
So we couldn't afford long-term care insurance on both of us, so I chose Nancy. And when I mentioned this, the insurance guy said I was absolutely right. So we've been paying long-term care insurance on Nancy for years. Now, what's it cost? Well, it depends on your age and one thing or another, but let's just throw out some numbers. Let's say it's $120 a month. You say, well, Paul, that's a chunk. Well, let me tell you, that's like $1,440 a year. You can multiply. How much does it cost per year minimum to be in a nursing home? At $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year.
At least.
Yeah,
because
at least. There's other things.
That's right. It all depends on care.
That's right. Level of care.
That's right.
So, if you are 50 and you've got older folks, encourage them to get long-term care insurance because that will, even if you have to pay it for them, listen, it'll save chewing up their estate to where there's nothing for them to leave to their children or grandchildren. Now, $60,000 a year, and listen, it is not at all uncommon for somebody to live in a nursing home for 10 years.
That's right. Because
of medical, the ability of the medical community and the care keeps people alive, and they may not be. See, not everybody goes to the nursing home as bedfast. They're able to sit in a chair. They're able to go to lunch, the dining room. They're able to do all kinds of things. It's not uncommon for people to live in a nursing home for 10 years. Well, how much is that at $60,000 a year? We need to explore this topic more and more and more because I hope I have your attention that you need to be insured. You need to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Take care of yourself and encourage the seniors to take care of themselves and be regular about medical care and dental care. Most people don't realize that many problems with the heart begin with the gums, with the teeth. You need to have good dental hygiene, good dental care. And heart problems take out more people than just about anything, or a lot of people. So make sure of your health, make sure of your diet, make sure you see the doctor. And if you have older people in your family who can't afford to do these things, help them afford it. You're still working, making money. Instead of buying that next new car that you really don't need, drive the one you've got for a while and help these folks get to the doctor because you say, well, they have Medicare. And, well, Medicare doesn't cover everything. It's like today, 2:00, I'll write a check for $3,500 for new hearing aids. Growing old is expensive. So if you have to help them and get that long-term care insurance, because when and if, but maybe not just if, but when they go into a nursing home. And right now it's $60,000 a year. It won't take long for them to chew up your inheritance. So,
See, and the 5,000 could be up to maybe 8,000,
well,
depending on the level of care.
maybe even 10,000, and that's $120,000 a year. And it doesn't take very many years of that to chew up somebody's estate.
No.
So if you want to invest in your future and you're only 50 and you've got relatives that are 65 and beyond, if they can't afford to go to the doctor, you pay it. If they can't afford to get long-term care insurance, you pay it, because it's a good investment. All right, Nancy, we've run out of time, and boy, do I have more to tell them. I hope you'll be with us next Monday, because we probably just carry this on a little bit and give you some of the ancillary ideas that come from it. Meantime, thank you to all the folks who made me welcome last Saturday when I spoke to the National Men's Conference. Had a good time, and I'm looking forward to more occasions, do the same sort of thing. Until then, Nancy, what do we say just to everybody? Stay blessed.
Boy and how.
Boy and how.
Boy and how.
Boy and how,
blessed.
stay blessed.